Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst. And we're here today to cover if Florian Wirtz is the right man for Liverpool. Okay, so in the midst of what has been so far a very mental summer transfer window, we have got probably the biggest move of the lot in Florian Wirtz potentially moving to Liverpool. And I just want to jump straight into this and talk about a lot of people have been turning their nose up at maybe the price and the quality and stuff like that. But I'm going to show you some data here that really does just give you a picture of how good this player is. So since the start of last season, so that's not 24-25, the season before, only Mohamed Salah has got more assists in league football in Europe's top 5 leagues than Florian Wirtz. And when it comes to players who have scored 20 goals and assisted 20 goals, there's only 4 in Europe in that same time period. Salah, Verz, Ollie Watkins and Michael Elise. So he's in very good company for them. And expected assists since the start of last season, he is 4th. And for possession won in the final third, he is 1st. So we are, and that is across all Europe's top 5 leagues. Chances created from open play, he's got the 5th most, to give you an idea of the players he's behind. Salah, Ødegaard, Fernandes, Palmer. Not bad company. Dribbles completed, he's got the 4th most behind Yamal, Kudus and Jeremy Doku. It's crazy how Yamal's there. He's top since the start of last season and he barely
just burst on the scene
and just took it by storm. So, but I think a lot of people have been questioning, is he worth this much money? And I do understand it for the most part, because I think 150 million on a single player is absolutely ridiculous if it's not an Erling Haaland or Kylian Mbappe level footballer. But I think when you actually look at some of the data that I've just mentioned there, keep in mind that this is a young player who's come back from 2 ACL injuries, by the way, and got better.
Crazy.
Like one of the weirdest things in football, coming back from 2 of them.
Gives me hope for Rodri,
But yeah, he's somewhat of a superhuman, and at the time of recording this, he's recently just scored against Portugal in the Nations League semi-final with a beautiful header. So I want you just to initially talk about Florian Wirtz and what you think of him as a player. But just from me, this is a player since 2021, 2022 who has been touted as one of the best young players in the world by far. And if he goes to Liverpool, I do think I would class it as Liverpool's first proper Galactico signing.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with the praise that's surrounded this player. I think the first time I saw him would have been the under 21 Euros for Germany, and at the time I was watching the game, I didn't know any of the players really. But I remember I can't remember what number he was wearing, but I tweeted something like, that number player,
68 is good.
Yeah, whoever that player is on first watch, he has it. I don't know what that it is, but he looks different quality. And he was brilliant in that tournament. I followed Germany following that game that I watched him in. And then he obviously got his ACL injury. And, I was really devastated at that time because I thought we'd lost the potential quality of such a brilliant player that I watched in that tournament. And he's actually, come on... And improved even since then. And
mental.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible player, in my opinion. Again, I suppose that the point of this video is, how does he fit in at Liverpool? And as incredible as he is that money best spent in pieces, or is he really worth the 100 million plus evaluation? We'll certainly get into this video, but I think his quality is far more than just chance creation. The pressing the possessions won stat, I didn't know that was the case, and that's ridiculous. And when you think back to Liverpool's style over the last 5-6 years, he almost encapsulates a lot of what they've been looking for and what they kind of represent. So a brilliant player, but his quality is based on also the players around him and the system, and we'll certainly get into that.
No, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about him at Leverkusen, because we actually think that he could play 2 or 3 different positions in Liverpool. We want to give them good enough depth and cover them well enough, and talk about where he will probably play his best football for Liverpool, whether or not it's the most frequent, we're yet to see. But this is a player who, in my opinion, he's great in all phases of the game, which is something we'll get onto. But I'm talking about a player who could play here, who could play here, who could play here, and could play them all very well. And I think he's not a small space player, and it sounds really weird because he's technically
I
brilliant.
think he can be, but
No, yeah,
he's not solely a small
But he's not
space player.
pigeonholed into, he's really technical. He's also really fast, robust. Like the injuries coming back from it to possession one. He's eager. He's tenacious off the ball. Yeah. In that Nations League game, he was really like
scrappy.
Really. And I don't know what it is, but he has like a lot of different facets. And I think for a player maybe like Cherky, for example, I think a lot of people are talking about him physically maybe not matching up, which we don't agree with. But a lot of people talk about that. I don't see any of them concerns with Verz. I think he's a player who plays at top intensity, but he's also ridiculously elegant in these smaller spaces. But when we did our Frimpong video, which is one of the best videos we've actually done in terms of the detail we put into it, we had a really interesting idea in terms of the actual tactical evolution of Liverpool under Arne Slot.
Yeah.
And that was something that me and you both spoke about, which was him playing off the left, coming inside, using an overlapping left back, and then shuffling the back line across. And I want to ask you...
Yeah, and almost going 2-3, I think we mentioned.
Oh yeah, we actually mentioned going 2-3. So this player going up here and then another midfielder dropping in.
Yeah.
And then you've got both your wing backs high, you've got your 3 flat midfielders, and you've got your 2 central defenders.
And then your 2 wingers, obviously, either side of your 9.
Before I give this on to you to explain again why that is his best zone, I've actually got his open play touch map from the season just gone and the season before that, and it shows that his most involved area on the pitch is 12% right on the touchline, just beneath the corner of the corner flag.
Yeah.
So this actually is, theoretically, if we're talking about a player who's worked his best football over the last 2 seasons, he actually takes most of his touches as a left winger.
Yeah.
And do you think he will play left wing? Do you think he's effective enough at left wing in this Liverpool team? And yeah, what do you make of that?
I think generally what you need to understand about Florian Wirtz is he's a player who has a lot of touches on the flank, but he does his most dangerous work and his best work in the left half space, which is obviously we're talking about this area here. Now, it doesn't matter if he starts as a left winger, it doesn't matter if he starts as a 10, it doesn't matter if he starts as an 8, it doesn't matter where he starts as long as you can get him in that left half space.
Yep.
I think the fact that he has had so many touches on that flank itself from that left-hand side proves he's certainly comfortable starting there as an initial position. In some of the previous videos we talked about Cole Palmer at Chelsea floating out and providing that double width as an option to get around teams. I think using Wirtz, if he's used as a number 8, floating into those wing positions to provide that extra body to go around defences, that's certainly an option that you can utilise with his quality there. I think receiving it in the wide areas where there's a little bit more space and then turning and driving at defences more centrally is another great use of his quality. I think when you're looking at his ability to play as a winger, which he certainly can do, you have to understand his interpretation of that version of winger that he's going to be, and also the value that you can get by playing him on the wing, which is the extra time, the extra space, and some of the space that it frees up in the middle that he can kind of aim towards passing to. So I certainly think he can play there. I certainly think it's a great idea, and obviously one that we went into depth with, especially if your profile of left back is one that's an overlapping fullback who can play those crosses in. I think Kerkez is the name being mentioned. Yeah. I think Kerkez as well as Frimpong can both underlap and attack the box really well as well. If that's the case, I wouldn't be averse to seeing Wirtz move out to these wide areas and play some crosses, but I wouldn't want to see him hanging out by the touchline. Yeah, either receiving, playing passes in there and helping progress the play down the wing, or just situationally popping out to the wing, playing some crosses. But generally his best zone is in there, and you can still play there as a winger, which when people talk about formations, they often don't appreciate enough. Yeah.
I think as well, we mentioned before that I was saying that he's a small space expert, but he's not a small space player. Yeah. And Liverpool this season, just gone by, haven't really been a team that, box teams in a lot. Sometimes they've gone quite direct and sometimes they attack larger spaces. And since the start of 23-24, we can see that he's got 16 goal-ending and assist-ending carries, 8 of each, showing that he's perfectly down the middle in terms of a two-way creator. Yeah. The players above him, Salah, Vinicius Jr., Xavi Simons, Leao, Mbappe. So it's a good list. Very, very good list. And it just shows that kind of thing, what we're saying there, which is he's not this David Silva-like player who's, very, very known for playing in these small pockets, and he's a danger in them pockets. Whilst he's also a player who's very much more big space and has that power to carry through the pitch and go very vertically.
Well, we were linked as a Manchester City fan. We were linked with him very heavily as the De Bruyne replacement.
Which makes sense, because he's got that same
What to
robustness.
carry, to pass whilst running at top speed, which obviously we've mentioned as De Bruyne, one of De Bruyne's primary qualities. So the fact he can do both and press and get involved defensively and duel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very complete profile, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I agree with that. And obviously, I actually think we're both in agreement that his best football would work coming in off the left-hand side for Liverpool, given the other players that he would be paired with. For me, or from what I've seen online, is that a lot of journalists are actually reporting that he's going to play. So if we take it back to Liverpool's build-up shape, we've got the 4-2-4 that they've been using with this false 9 next to him. A lot of people have actually been saying that he might play false 9, which in this Liverpool team was Luis Diaz in last season, and he's not playing on the centre line as a centre forward right here. He's actually dropping next to Szoboszlai, creating that box in midfield, and you've got your two wingers pinning very high and ready to attack the space. He's now gone from coming in off the left-hand side to actually playing in the left half space. So whilst he's a false 9 on paper, and whilst I don't think it's really a solution against deep defences, I think he might get a bit lost in there, even though he's a very good, sneaky player. And again, we've seen that against Portugal. What would you make of him playing as a false 9?
I think I'm looking at the best interpretation of false 9 this season, Dembele.
Yeah, Dembele.
And I think one thing that Dembele had, Dembele had a brilliant intelligence and a brilliant tenacity.
Yeah.
I think your press leads from your front player.
That's also another good point, because he'll be
brilliant at
with
pressing.
Yeah,
them two there, especially if your false 9 is Verz. He's a brilliant presser. He's brilliant at reading the game. He knows when to go. So in games where perhaps they want a stronger press, I wouldn't be averse to seeing
a
Verz. I know. I heard it as well. So that as a solution would be very sensible. And centre backs don't like following players out into these zones anyway.
No.
So if you've got players who can crash the box, then whether that's a Mo Salah coming in here, whether that's even a Mo Salah perhaps playing a bit, as two strikers, they can almost be like two false 9s, and he arrives and whilst he drops and vice versa. So I think there's potential solutions there. It wouldn't be my first option, but I think the ability we've seen for top teams to play with a false 9 and succeed, especially with other players playing on rotations, especially attacking the box like PSG. The PSG blueprint, I think, out of anyone in a Liverpool side would favour Wirtz playing in that false 9 position. Yeah,
and then finally, the one that was actually the most concretely reported, and whether or not, I don't know if I could interpret Verz as a number 10. And I don't know if I would class him as a number 10 if you just watched him. I don't think I'd go, he's a number 10. But I think a lot of people are maybe potentially thinking that he could take Dominic Szoboszlai's space, which I don't think, again, is doable, just simply because of the amount of running that Szoboszlai does for Liverpool, the amount of sort of distance and space he covers in behind Salah, in behind Trent when he was there, obviously. What would you make of him if this was Luis Diaz still? What would you make of him playing as this one? Because I don't mind him playing in the deeper spaces. I don't mind him picking up the ball in front of the defence. I think he's actually quite technically secure in there. Yeah. And obviously it allows him to do the big carries that we were talking about just before. I think Paul Joyce was the reporter that actually reported Liverpool seeing him as a central attacking midfielder. Well, in my opinion, the only real position he could take would be Szoboszlai's. Yeah. Could you see that happening?
In a way, I actually can, and my rationale for it would be Trent's gone. You've lost that deep passing quality.
Yes.
Now you've replaced that with, in theory, Verz. You've replaced some of that. You don't need to replace that passing quality from right back, but I think deep passing in general is such a valuable quality now when you almost have this back and forth in teams pressing and trying to jump on you. So I think as a winger, it's hard to get deep enough to then play these lofty passes that he's really good at as well. So I think he's better on the left hand side. So I would probably say probably swap him there, and then you push on your wing backs there. Probably you go 2-3 like we've discussed, and push him up there as well. So you've got your wing backs, you've got your 9. And then you've got your 3 central midfielders. So you think he
could play a bit deeper if we talk about that flat midfield 3? You think he could play that?
Yeah, I think he could, because he's brilliant at duelling and it goes often underrated. I think he's got a good deceptive first touch, which players like, for example, Thiago and that Thiago feint and turn,
Verratti,
Cruz, Verratti, all of those players. So I think certainly in those areas he can probably do that, use his first touch, get it into space and try and play a little bit more in a dictating role, but then your partners have to be players who are a bit more sort of pragmatic. I think as brilliant as McAllister is, and this is not a permanent solution, but I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Szoboszlai, Gravenberch and Wirtz in games. And it's certainly something that would rotate between games and opposition dependent. But like we've spoken about through this video, depending on the opposition's style and their quality, Slot adapts within his general game model. And the opportunity for a player to play here and pick passes deep, the opportunity for that same player to play here, drop in unmarked and have other players attack the box here, or the opportunity for that player to be this player here and allow your fullback to push forward, being that same player is
gives
remarkable.
you so many
It's
answers,
such a great
doesn't
tool,
it?
And in games where you don't know, you might need a certain answer. He gives you 3 answers, off the bat there.
It's very interesting that, whatever the fee may end up being, it's really interesting how we're pinpointing versatility as like one of the main things. But I think that's actually a massively positive thing in his game, the fact that we could see him playing all 3 roles really well. And I think that's just appreciation of his quality as a player. And I think the fact that you can, he works in so many areas of the pitch, and like we're not really seeing him on the right either, but I reckon he'd probably work over there.
Yeah, I think so.
And I just think, I think Slot is someone who's definitely adapted to his personnel last season at Liverpool, and that won them the league title. And I think he's probably one of the best player profilers, in terms of putting his players in the best positions.
I think he'll protect Salah's legs even more this season. You've got Frimpong coming in.
You've got Frimpong,
Verz.
lots of legs. Frimpong, Verz, Szoboszlai, they're all hard runners, and I think, it's a really good start. As we mentioned it very briefly on the Frimpong one, but I'm again really scared of this Liverpool team. And I think the Florian Wirtz signing strikes me as a player or a move that the club is making, where Liverpool are no longer wanting to have one league in 6 years. They want to have consecutive league titles, and they want to stop being this team where they're going for these shrewd buys. They want to maintain their ability to stay at the top of the pack.
Gerrard had a really nice quote. I might be misquoting it here, but he said, "We need to build a roof while the sun's still shining."
That's perfect. That's what I mean. That's perfect. So get these, you're putting the finishing touches on an already title-winning
Don't wait
product.
until you need to sort something out.
Don't bring in your stopgap players. Bring in players who are absolutely world-class and you need to replace. And Trent Alexander-Arnold's going to go, and I think you mentioned sort of the range of passing and sort of the answers to a lot of deep blocks that he has. Well, we've just been through all the data. Verz has that quality. I'm never going to sit here and say that 100+ million for any player is going to be an absolute bang on signing. Brilliant, would have paid it twice kind of thing. I'm just looking at the player quality, and regardless of the money spent, I think in Florian Wirtz to Liverpool, he's a player that can handle the intensity, handle the technical ability, can play multiple roles in this Liverpool team. Slot profiles him really well. They've adopted this style where they go in a bit more big space, which again suits him. He's going to probably be at near enough the top of the pressing shape, which again gets the most out of him. I think Frimpong and Verz is just a very, very solid start to the window.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything final that you would want to say on Liverpool in general or Florian Wirtz as a player?
Well, huge Florian Wirtz fan for many, many years. I think I would love to see him in the Premier League, irrespective of anything else. Manchester City fans are gutted. He's probably not coming to us. But in general, I do think steep fee if it is the fees that are being reported, but I would always rather pay that much money for an attacker. And in the Premier League, we've often seen Caicedo, Declan Rice, almost midfielders and defensive midfielders at that, be the big money signing. So a big money attacking signing, as risky as big money signings are, for me, it's always welcomed for the product of the league. So I'm excited to see it. I think it's a brilliant player and as long as you've got your other pieces around that, if you don't need the money to boost other areas, for example, then I certainly think he's a top player for this league.
Yeah, no, brilliantly summarised there. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel, and we'll be back for more analysis next week.